Hello, CS112. Today I'll be going over a quick solution to Lab 7, which has to do with user-defined functions. So you can see you were given 3 separate functions to do. The first 2 were smaller portions of a larger function, which was the third function. These were more commonly known as helper functions to this third function. So I'm just going to dive right into it and start with the very first guy. So the very first function you had to do was def cut list, where you would be given a number list where it would have duplicates, and your job is to return the duplicates. Now this is the code that you were given initially with the function signature, as well as return new list. So this kind of gave you a hint in the easiest way to implement this. There are ways to iterate through a number list with duplicates like this, and then remove them in place. But it gets a bit complex, especially if you have more than 2 in a row because of how the index would update within your loop. So if you're returning a new list, this is a much easier way to do this. So what I'm going to do first, obviously, is I'm going to initialize new list to an empty list. And now I got to think about what I want to do. So I want to iterate through number list, and I want to add values to my new list because obviously I still want to return the same list, but just without the duplicates. And to do that, there was actually a hint on the bottom of the assignment PDF saying that you can use in and not in outside of an if statement. So that's kind of that was the hint for this one. So if I just say for num in number list, what I want to do here is I want to check if num, because num is going to represent every single number in number list, if num not in number list, I'm going to say new lists dot appends num. Now, what does this do? Why am I doing this? Well, let's just pretend this is our list for a sec. Excuse me. So we're iterating through number list. This is our number list here, and we're checking, is 1 not in new list? Well, new list is empty right now, so we're going to go ahead and add this 1. Well, now let's go to the next element. Is num in new list? Well, yes, it is, so we're not going to touch it. And so on and so forth. So even if there was a 1 way over here, there would already be a 1 in here. So new list is only appending unique elements, which is what we want. And once this for loop is completely done executing, that's when I want to return this new list. So I'm on the same indentation level as it. So a way you can test this sub function here, because you were only given test cases for this guy right here, is, well, you could call the function separately. So I'm just going to steal that thing right there. I'm going to print out cut list, and I'm going to paste a list in there. Now you can put any list you want. It should just return the list without duplicates. So really quickly, I'm going to comment out these guys so I don't get an error if I run this code, because I want to test it real quick. I'm going to save. And lastly, I'm going to go to my terminal and type in Python cat, run that, and oh, I got an empty list. Let's see what is happening here, what error I am running into. Num in number list if num is not in. Yes, so I am checking, I need to check if num is not in new list, as I described while I was going over the algorithm there. So I need to check if it's not in my new list, add it to that new list, because I'm only going to be adding unique elements to it. So if I run that again, there we go. I essentially get this list, but have removed all of the duplicates. So I've tested that out. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this test case now. I'm actually going to hit Control-Z a bunch of times to get all my stuff back. But remember to change this to new lists. All right, now let's move on to the next one. Now this was actually worded kind of interestingly on the assignment, but all you need to do for this one is determine whether sum, which is just going to be an integer, is even or odd. So you literally just need to check if sum is even, return 0, else return odd. So that's all I'm going to do. So I'm just going to say if sum modulus 2 is equal to 0, I'm going to return 0, because again, any number modulus 2, because remember modulus returns the remainder of the operand in its divisor, if it's 0, that means it's even. So I'm going to say if sum modulus 2 equals 0, I'm going to return 0. And then else I can just actually say return 1, because if this passes true, it will this function will stop executing here. If it's false, then yeah, that means it's odd. It can only be even or odd, this number, since it's an integer. Now keep in mind, this is literally just like a number like 26 or 1 or 7. It's not going to be a list. I saw a lot of you guys trying to iterate through sum, and that's not what we wanted you guys to do here. So last but not least, our big function, which is going to call these functions. So there are multiple steps to this, so I'm going to comment it out first, create a code skeleton, so it's easier for me when I start coding. So very first thing I want to do is remove duplicates from number list. And obviously I'm going to be calling cutlist for that because I don't want to have redundant code in my program. Once it is removed, I need to find the sum of the new list that I've created. And then from that, I need to find if the sum is even or odd, and I'm going to be calling odd even because that is what we'll be returning. And based on that, print statements. Alrighty, so let's just dive right into this. So first, we're going to remove duplicates from number list. Now, a lot of you guys didn't know how to call a function from another function. It was a little concerning, but that is okay. We're all new here. But I'm just going to create a new variable. Again, this could be called anything. Call it new list and set it equal to the return value of this function name with the parameter in which I want to remove duplicates from. So I'm going to say cut list and then number list, because I want to remove the duplicates from number list, and I'm going to store that into my new list here, which is what I want. Now, some of you guys, when I showed this to you during the lab, you were saying, well, I've already defined new list up here. How come I can do that? Well, new list it's defined within this function's scope, so it doesn't actually exist within this function. So for instance, if in this function I wanted to print new list, this would give me an error and say new list doesn't exist because it doesn't exist within the scope of this function. If you had a global variable outside the function and said like new list equals an empty list, that would then be recognized. But you guys will learn about this real soon, but typically avoid using global variables. So back to this. Like I said before, I am storing the return value of cut list number list, which is just going to remove the dump duplicates of number list into new list. The next thing I want to do is find the sum of the new list, which we should all know how to do by now. I'm just going to say total equals 0, and I'm going to say for num in new list, because that's the list without duplicates, I'm going to say total plus equals num. And now that is just simply going to add up all the numbers in num list, or new list. So once I have that, I need to find out if the sum is even or odd. Well, that I'm going to create another variable. I'm just going to say even or odd equals 0. So right now it is equal to, well, actually, no. I'm sorry. I'm not going to set it equal to 0. I'm going to be doing something similar to this, right? Because we want a return value based on what we've calculated. So I'm going to say odd even equals odd, or odd or even equals odd even, which is our function name. And as a parameter, I'm just going to pass this total in. So I want to determine if what it's going to be, whether even or odd. So now we can actually go right onto our print statements, because we know that this will, even or odd, will either be 1 or 0. So as I'm sure some of you guys know, but if in Python an integer is considered true if it's simply not 0. Anything but 0 will return true. So I can simply say if even or odd, and that is a completely valid statement. So if even or odd, if this returns true, that means it's odd, right? Because if it was 0, that would be even. So if this passes true, then we are odd. So I'm going to print out. What am I going to print out? I'm going to print out the format, which is right here. So some little space right there. I'm going to print the total as well. I'm going to cast it to a string so I can actually concatenate these things, because I can't say sum plus, I can't do the string plus the total variable without the str, because I would be trying to add a letter and a number. So I'm going to say the total plus, and then I'm just going to say this is an odd number, and close that bad boy up. Now that's going to print out only odd ones. So again, what this is essentially saying is if 1, right? If 1, that will pass true, it will print out the odd statements. However, if even or odd was equal to 0, like I said before, 0 is false in Python. So now all I have to say is an else statement here. So if even or odd, do this. Else, I'm actually just going to copy and paste this guy right here. Boom, I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to run this bad boy, checking if I have any lingering things. Well, I do need to change this to even, hit save, and I'm going to run this, and fingers crossed it works. So again, I would really review the syntax of how to call another function and store it in a variable, because we know that cutlist returns a list without duplicates. We can create a new list variable and point it to the return value of a list we want to remove duplicates from passed into the cutlist function. Same with here, we want to determine if an integer is even or odd with our function up here. So we can just create a new variable and point it towards the return value of that integer we want to determine, passing to our odd even function. And this is interesting. This is kind of like a custom Boolean type. You'll learn in C that 0 and 1s are all really Booleans are. So if it's a 0, that's usually false, and if it's a 1, it's true. So that's why down here I was able to say if even or odd, because as long as this is not 0, as long as even or odd is not 0, this will be true and print this statement. Now the reason I wanted to do this, I had to do an if and an else statement, is because if I did not have this else statement, it would print out both of these guys if this passed true. So you do need to specify even or odd.